I'm wondering, and maybe you can kind of give us the download on what is the current understanding of Ether and Ethereum in TradFi. Like, what does the average TradFi member, the Wall Street goer, understand about Ether and Ethereum? Like, how should we think about this?
I once asked someone, a TradFi person, what is ETH? What is Ethereum? And the answer was Ethereum is a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, but it has some utility. And I was like, that's actually a very good answer, right? It's it's very concise. It's like a very high level, and it is descriptive. But it under the surface of that simple statement is like all the juicy details, right? And so that is probably a good line to think about when you like, what does TradFi know? They know it's a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, which is digital gold, and it has some utility, but they don't really know what that means. And, one of the other topics, this person will be okay with me telling this story. One of the other topics that we're going to get into later is like, have there been like TradFi or like in particular like Fed people that have been pulled in, been ETH pilled. And besides my friend Benson, who had written this paper, one of the first papers on the portfolio benefits of having crypto assets in a portfolio, there was a guy who worked for him at the time, and we met like 5 years ago, and I haven't seen him since. But I was in Dubai representing Scroll, and I was actually at Arthur Hayes' party, and this guy comes up to me behind me. He goes, "You're Sam Jernigan. You know my friend Benson Durham, who I used to work for at the Fed." And I was like, "Oh my God, who is this?" I turned around and I couldn't remember his name at first. So he was like, "Dion." I was like, "Oh my God, Dion, how are you?" He's like, "Good." I was like, "What are you doing here?" This guy used to work for a asset pricing theorist at the Federal Reserve. I was like, "Dion," I was like, what are you doing here? Like on this this like beach party for Arthur Hayes in Dubai. And he goes, "Oh, I'm into crypto now. I'm a DeFi founder." And I was like, "What did you start?" And he was like, "Term lending." I was like, "Oh my God, it's brilliant." It's one of the missing pieces in DeFi is actually fixed rate lending. So Dion and his partner have started a term.finance. And he goes, "What have you been up to?" Blah, blah. And I told him, he asked me, he goes, "Well, what do you think TradFi people understand about crypto?" And I used this line, and I remember Dion looked at me, he goes, "So you're saying I should still be buying ETH?" So I was like, basically, like the most bullish thing about ETH right now is the fact that the understanding of TradFi is that it's this crypto asset like Bitcoin, because I think when they fully understand it, it's going to blow their brains out. I had a breakfast last week with a financial institution that has some periphery exposure to crypto, let's say. And I had to explain this. So we walked through what is digital gold. Bitcoin is digital gold, and they had knew the Michael Saylor routine well. And then I was like, but for example, Tether, which you've probably heard of, USDT. I was like, of course. I was like, none of that is on Bitcoin. He was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "There's no Tether on Bitcoin," and he did not know this. I was like, all of it is on Ethereum and Tron, which we don't want to talk about, is on Ethereum and Tron. And, Tether, the company, pays fees to the Ethereum network. They do not pay any fees to Bitcoin. And this was, I think he said something to the effect of, "Tell me more, explain this." He did not know this. So that the understanding is pretty low, even for, I would say people that in TradFi that are reasonably exposed to this to the space. And so that's very bullish, but it also should, again, hashtag early. It's early.
Okay, so TradFi has very limited understanding of Ethereum. They sort of like now have barely wrapped their minds around Bitcoin, but by and large, they don't understand Ethereum. And Sam, you said something interesting there. You said once they do understand it, minds will be blown. So why? Maybe this gets back to the conversation we were having earlier around sort of the risk-free rate in Ethereum, and this idea of ETH producing positive yield was a term you said, and we said we'd get back to this in the podcast. But does this have something to do with why you think TradFi's mind will be blown when they understand what this asset actually is? Give us the case here.
Well, this is where like you run a lot of risk doing an hour-long podcast for this, because I tried to give you one very simple vertical, one simple utility of Ethereum, say Swift messaging, a financial money, assets, and the simultaneous settlement of those funds. That alone is going to change the world. You can think about stablecoins as having pressed a button on an unstoppable progression at this point. But that alone is a huge deal. But and I think the natural kind of evolution of that is that if you have this decentralized permissionless asset ETH that is effectively accruing value and becoming, whether you want to call it outright deflationary or ultrasound or whatever kind of description you want to put around it, now it becomes collateral, because this is a cash flow bearing asset. The cash flows from that asset are returned right now via two primary means. The first is cash flow is bought and burned, like Apple buys back its stock to return the earnings to shareholders. Here, the ETH is burned to return the cash flows to ETH holders, and then some of it is accrued to stakers. But the system as a whole is over a meaningful period of time. Fees are very low right now. That's partly because we're still in bear market, basically. I mean, I think traditionally a bull market is when you're making new highs. We're not quite there yet in Ethereum. Part of that's because we're in a bear market, and we haven't started that virtuous process of bringing in a lot of new people playing with MetaMask or Argent, et cetera. Part of it is because the recent upgrade, proto-dank sharding, was a scalability enhancement, right? So this was not a minor upgrade. This is one where we actually scaled Ethereum in a very meaningful way. We scaled it so much that fees are cheap, and that's what we wanted. And that is likely to be a temporary phenomenon, right? You've had Justin on here to talk about this, but it's, if Anatoly's like, they used to be that the Solana bear case on Ethereum was that fees are too high. Well, guess what? We did a lot of really advanced cryptographic work. I mean, the work Dankred does, I think he's probably the smartest person in all of crypto. Dankred's team, these are, cryptography, ZK, and very advanced cryptographic schemes are scaling Ethereum in a way that I don't even think crypto understands. Certainly TradFi does not. One of the things, this line that Vitalik has that I think is hugely underappreciated is that, ZK is, and maybe even eventually fully homomorphic encryption, but ZK is Ethereum's transformer moment, right? This is hugely underappreciated. This is a largely not just a crypto manifestation driven by Ethereum, but even in academia, Ethereum community has driven the academic community within cryptography around ZK and now FHE. And, so fees are the burn right now temporarily is low because we have proto-dank sharding significantly, via the addition of blobs, has made it cheaper to transact on Ethereum. It's made it cheaper for L2s to consume Ethereum DA, and that's great. But over time, the cheaper fees will onboard a lot more users, and eventually they'll go back up, and that's why we will progressively increase the number of blobs, and we'll also eventually have full dank sharding, which will, as you guys know well, basically allow infinite scaling for pennies, and the number of transactions will be much higher. So right now, temporarily, the burn looks a little bit lower, but again, that's for good reasons. It's because we have actually scaled Ethereum to allow more onboarding cheaper via cheaper fees. But long term, again, with the right thoughtful changes to the issuance curve or other appropriate adjustments such that we can keep ETH a outright deflationary asset, it acts like collateral. And now you have a permissionless, decentralized collateral that exists in the world that has never existed before. And I think one of the most underappreciated bull cases that Justin Drake has laid out actually a few years ago at DevCon in Bogota, I guess maybe a year and a half or so ago, where he explained how, what would be if you had a ETH only, governance free, ETH collateralized stablecoin. What would the price of ETH need to be in order to provide for this utility? We need ETH to be ultrasound collateral, to use the meme, but basically deflationary collateral such that it cannot go to zero. And that is really crucial, because then you can very safely, again, with the addition of removing as much governance as possible and keeping it capital efficient, which we have a plan for, but we're not there yet. ETH can be collateral, not just for stable coins, which there's trillions of demand for that, but for other types of assets as well. I remember it was like 5 or 6 years ago. I think it was Joe Lubin who had this idea. He said, "Hey, you could have a smart contract in Ethereum that was an agreement between, say, the U.S. and Iran that is collateralized by ETH, this permissionless collateral, where they both have to put up, and if one of them violates it, neither of them can control Ethereum or ETH, and so this would be a slashable type of penalty, right? So you can enforce behavior, good actions. You can basically enforce contracts using this asset, and that's I don't think people have even really wrapped their head around the design space beyond just, again, crypto collateralized stablecoins that we can have, but we're talking about trillions of additional value for this of collateral value on top of the cash flow value. So you have the cash flows that are accruing to this SWIFT plus chips or Fedwire settlement system, right? This moving of financial assets and the fees that accrue. And then that then allows you to have this permissionless collateral that can be that has an additional value. So I think this is one of the reasons it's very difficult to tell the story of ETH, is that it's infinite possibilities. But I would say that is at a high level, you have the cash flow story, and then you have the potential value of this permissionless collateral. And the smallest, what I used to jokingly say, this is the SAM, or the smallest addressable market for ETH, is 5 to 10% of Chinese deposits. So call it $2 to $4 trillion. That is the smallest addressable market for ETH, the asset.
Do you think the addressable market for Ether, the asset, is bigger than the addressable market for Bitcoin? This is a test of your ETH maxiness, Sam. So do you believe in the flippening? Do you think that's going to happen? Do you think these are equivalent assets, or is just one destined to always be larger than the other? Or is Ethereum going to flip in Bitcoin? Does that question even matter in your world?
The answer is yes. The market opportunity is definitely larger. I think that the Bitcoin community is probably figuring that out. That's why all of a sudden you're seeing, efforts like OPCat and some of these turning on opcodes that previously, the religion of Bitcoin said was unacceptable. Yes, unquestionably so. Does that mean that they'll ever evolve on time, or evolve sufficiently, or enable sufficient functionality to challenge ETH? Probably not, even in the 100% scenario of a Bitcoin Maxi, or let's say you had a great guest on recently who kind of walked through some of this. I don't remember his name.
Is it Eric Wall from Bitcoin? On the Bitcoin side, you're talking about?
I'm not sure. I remember he was from North Carolina, actually, because I grew up in North Carolina.
Who are we talking about? So many guests, Sam. So many guests.
But anyways, I think people who want to do more with Bitcoin and have been inspired by what Ethereum has done and want to enable some of that capability, even in their wildest dreams, I don't think they'll ever really get there. I think, and look, I think, even if you are able to get all that, the Bitcoin community may not, at the end of the day, these are social systems. I think it's underappreciated the degree to which, at the end of the day, these are social systems. And, one of the things that caused me to want to put my reputation, my career behind Ethereum is, after spending a few years now getting to know and interacting regularly with the Ethereum community, the breadth of it, but also the individuals that like on the research side, this is probably the highest functioning and executing group of people anywhere in the world. And I had a better, I said that better probably a year or so ago to someone, and I wish I could remember the exact wording, but it really is. I mean, I'm close enough to understand just how both functioning, but also like the values and the way that people interact with each other. This is one of the reasons you don't hear on Twitter, maybe with a couple of exceptions, a lot of screaming about ETH or degrading Bitcoin, et cetera, the same way the Bitcoin maxis do. It's just not part of the culture. So I was both impressed with the people, the culture, the way that people communicate with each other, the focus on research and not noise. And that, I guess I was ETH built. And, now I'm trying to tell that story to a broader TradFi audience.
If you enjoyed all of that, then you'll absolutely love the Bankless newsletter. Join over 300,000 fellow readers, all for free. Click below to sign up.